appointed times with the resurrection and then his return and then the great wedding feast of the Lamb to then kickstart this great millennial reign that is spoken of. But the fall appointed times have not yet been fulfilled, which means that we're still in this season post Shavuot, almost 2,000 years. And this is why we're going to take this deep dive into the counting of the Omer and the Feast of Shavuot and what it's actually pointing to regarding his great plan of redemption, because this is still the season we're in. Yes, the fall appointed times are extremely important, but we are still awaiting for our King to fulfill them. And I think we lose sight of that sometimes, that we are, though we're at the end of this post-spring feast season, I want to call it that, we're still in it. We're just coming to the end of it. And so do we really understand what the counting of the Omer, the Feast of Weeks and Shavuot are really pointing to from Elohim's perspective regarding his great plan of redemption? Hence, we're going to embark on this series. So let's just jump right in. In Leviticus 23, it says in verses 10 and 11, "Speak to the people of Israel and say to them, when you come into the land that I give you and reap its harvest, you shall bring the sheaf of the first fruits of your harvest to the priest, and he shall wave the sheaf before Yah, so that you, the people, may be accepted. On the day after the Sabbath, the priest shall wave it." And so this was regarding the harvest. And as Curtis and I have mentioned many times, there's actually 3 first fruits offerings within the appointed times. There's what's commonly known as first fruits, which is actually the first one. This was the first fruits of the barley harvest. Shavuot, or Pentecost, is the first fruits of the wheat harvest, and Sukkot is actually the first fruits of the fruit harvest, where we bring the first fruits of the harvest. And so this is speaking of the first fruits. Now, this sheaf of barley, in the Hebrew, the word is omer, or what we would say in anglicized version, the omer. It literally means a heap, a sheaf, an omer. An omer was also a dry measure. It was a tenth of an ephah, which is approximately 2 liters for us in the modern day. So an omer was roughly 2 liters of this sheaf of the barley harvest. And this would kickstart the count from the first of the first fruits to the second of the first fruits, i.e. Pentecost or Shavuot. And we know that we're called to count the days, as we will see. Hence why this period of counting of 50 days has commonly been referred to as the counting of the Omer. And so this is where this language has come in. It is actually biblical. It's not something that's just been plucked out of thin air. When we look at the Feast of Weeks and this counting period, it goes on to say in verses 15 and 16 that you shall count 7 full weeks from the day after the Sabbath, from the day that you Omer, the Omer of the wave offering. You shall count 50 days to the day after the 7th Sabbath. Then you shall present a grain offering of new grain to Yah. So again, he's saying that on Pentecost, you will bring a new grain offering, the second first fruits offering of the yearly appointed times. And so you see here the commandment to count from the day that the Omer, was waved on the first of the first fruits. Hence the language of the counting of the Omer. The word for count, though, and this is what's going to springboard this whole series, the word count, safar. It means to count, i.e. numerically, or to measure, whether it be to measure grain, measure weight, just to measure in a broad sense, to number. It also means to take account of, i.e., to remember and to note and to give an account, to reckon. It also means to recount, i.e., to profess, to speak of something that has occurred or that is occurring or that will occur, to proclaim. Look at this, that the spring feasts have been fulfilled and they are now living. These are coming from a fulfilled but living position. But when we speak of the fall appointed times, we're actually still in rehearsal. I've just been given a note that an omer is approximately half a gallon for the Americans, if you're speaking freedom units, if I can say that. So an omer was roughly half a gallon, 2 liters for those that use the metric system. But we're told to count for 49 days plus 1, i.e. 50 days. So yes, to count, to relate, to take account of, to reckon, to proclaim, to recount, to rehearse, to declare. Look at this, to count exactly or accurately, exactly. Bear this in the back of your mind, because we know that the Father wears the heavens as a wristwatch. He knows the number of the hairs on our heads. He knows things exactly. It's only us, fallen men and women, that don't fully know these things. The word safar, by extension, also means to inscribe, i.e. to take an account of and to inscribe into rock or into tablet. Think of the covenant being inscribed on the tablets or being written on our hearts. Now, that's the verbal form. From this, you have the noun form, a secretary or a scribe. So the word safar in its noun form is sofer. So a scribe, a sofer, would safar. He would inscribe, he would count, he would rehearse, he would relate. And so this word in the Hebrew is actually already quite rich, telling us what we're supposed to be doing for 50 days while we count this omer. What is it that we are to reckon? What is it that we are to proclaim? What is it that we are to declare? What is it that we are to count? Bear in mind that in the fulfillment of the spring feasts, what would come with Pentecost or Shavuot, the disciples would be sent out, wouldn't they? What would they be proclaiming? They would be proclaiming the good news of Messiah, the plan of redemption coming into its next stage of fulfillment almost 2,000 years ago. And they would then go on to proclaim, to say, hey, the fall appointed times are coming. They are coming. We've just come out of the fulfillment of the spring, but know the fall appointed times will be fulfilled. I hope people are understanding, just beginning to see the scratch of the surface of how rich this counting of the Omer, this feast of weeks, this jubilee of weeks, 7 times 7 really is. Okay, Exodus 16 verse 4. This is about the manna coming down from heaven. Yah said to Moses, behold, I am about to rain bread from heaven for you, and the people shall go out and gather a day's portion every day, that I may test them whether they will walk in my Torah or not. And so we know that the gathering of the manna, as it related to the Exodus out of Egypt, happened in the lead up to Mount Sinai, which when you dig deeper into this, you know that this occurred on Shavuot. And so the gathering of the manna essentially occurred within this counting of the Omer period. So scripture is telling us that the counting of the Omer is thematically, well, literally related to bread coming down from heaven. This heavenly bread that the people were to eat, that they were to gather, that they were to number, to reckon, to measure, to safar, okay? In the Hebrew, to gather a day's portion every day. The English kind of obfuscates what's really going on in the Hebrew. The Hebrew says, velaktu davar yom beyomo. Okay? Velaktu means, and they shall gather. Davar yom. It literally means a word a day. The word davar, word. It can also mean a thing. But what's really interesting, davar yom can mean literally a daily word. And then beyomo in Hebrew, in the English, you can translate it two ways. You shall gather a daily word in its day, or in its appointed time, you could say, but it can also mean they shall gather a daily word in his day. His day. Whose day? Who do the appointed times belong to? Do you see what's going on in the Hebrew? The people were commanded in this period of time to gather a daily word. And this word is being linked to the bread coming down from heaven. They were gathering the manna, okay? And it was measured in omers. Very interesting. 16, verse 16 to 18. This is what Yah has commanded. Gather of it, each one of you, as much as he can eat. You shall each take an omer, an omer, according to the number of the persons that each of you has in his tent. In fact, in the Hebrew, it says, according to the number of souls. Okay, it's interesting. The people of Israel did so. They gathered, some more, some less. But when they measured it, again, right, this idea of measuring, counting, when they measured it with an omer, 2 liters or a half gallon, whoever gathered much had nothing left over, and whoever gathered little had no lack. Each of them gathered as much as he could eat. And so this gathering of bread from heaven being measured with omers is going on in this period of the counting of the omer, this feast of weeks. And so this is the shadow picture being given to us. And this is just, this is the surface level, the pashat, if you want to call it that. And so this is where this language of the counting of the omer comes in. But remember that the word to count also has this idea to proclaim, to reckon, to inscribe, and that this would lead to the giving of the, not the giving of the covenant as we'll see, but the codifying of the covenant. We'll get onto that. Okay, the bread from heaven. It mentions this, that when the people of Israel saw it, they said to one another, what is it? What is it? In the Hebrew, they're saying manhu, manhu. What's interesting is that manhu, it can also be translated as who is he? Who is he? What is he? So they're seeing this bread from heaven and they're saying, what is it? Who is he? For they did not know what it was. And Moses said to them, it is the bread that Yah has given to you to eat. Now the house of Israel called its name manna. In the Hebrew, manna is actually man. So there's this word play going on. What is it? Who is he? Man who? And they're calling this bread man. It literally manna in English means what? What or who? It was like coriander seed, white, and the taste of it was like wafers made with honey. And so it was sweet to the taste. This bread from heaven, the taste of it was sweet. It was good to the soul. It was, now, who was the bread from heaven? Yeshua clearly said, I am the bread from heaven. Your fathers ate bread in the wilderness and they died, but whoever eats of me shall not die and have eternal life. Yeshua, our King, our Messiah, was saying he is the fulfillment of what this manna was pointing to, this bread. And so when you piece all this together, what is it that we are meant to be gathering, this daily word. Who is the word from heaven? Who is the word of Yah? What are we to be reckoning? What are we to be measuring? What are we to be proclaiming? Who are we to be proclaiming? What were the disciples doing after the fulfillment of the spring appointed times? Who were they proclaiming? The question is, man hu? Who is he? Well, the disciples were saying, he is Yeshua. It is Yeshua, and that he is about to go and fulfill these appointed times coming at the fall. Do you see how rich this counting of the Omer period it really is and what it's pointing to? In Exodus 24, so this is after down with the tablets of the covenant, there's the terms of the covenant. Then he, Yah, said to Moses, come up to Yah, you and Aaron, Nadab and Abihu, and 70 of the elders of Israel, and worship from afar. Moses alone shall come near to Yah, but the others shall not come near, and the people shall not come up with him. There's beautiful analogies here of the bride of Messiah, but that's another topic. Moses came and told the people all the words of Yah and all the rules. The word here being used for Moses telling the people the words of the covenant is this word safar. He's counting them. He's relating to the people the words or the terms of the covenant to the people. And so now this word that's related to the counting of the Omer is now being related to the covenant itself. Moses is recounting, reckoning, declaring, accurately telling the people the words of Yah. And the people answered with one voice, and they said, all the words that Yah has spoken, we will do. Okay, so they are coming into this bond of covenant. And so now we can connect these themes together. Counting the days, proclaiming the days, the manner, man hu, what is it? Who is he? Gather a daily word of heavenly bread and recount it, inscribe it onto your heart. And then all this being linked to the people of the house of Israel and the covenant between them and the king. So, do you see why I say there's actually a lot that people don't really... There's been a lot of muddying of the waters regarding the counting of the Omer and the Feast of Weeks. It's not just this thing of count the days, tick, 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 and you've got your countdown timer to this Feast of Pentecost. It's actually very rich, and it's relating to the covenant between the king and his people, and this proclamation that will go forth to the earth. Rich indeed it is. Okay, the heavens, they count. The heavens declare the glory of Elohim, and the sky above proclaims his handiwork. The word there to declare is this word, safar, to count, to relate. So the declare, proclaim something. The glory of Elohim. Well, what is the glory of Elohim? His great plan of redemption. Look at this. Day to day pours out speech, and night to night reveals knowledge. There is no speech, nor are there words whose voice is not heard. Their voice goes out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. Something is being proclaimed to the four corners of the earth. And it's related to the glory of Elohim. And it's related to the stars. And it's also being linked to this count, this counting, this rehearsing, this inscribing. When Elohim set up the stars in the heavens, he literally inscribed in the heavens his glory, his great plan of redemption. In them, he has set a tent for the sun. which comes out like a bridegroom leaving his chamber. So now the son is being related to a bridegroom. Who is the bridegroom, right? And like a strong man runs its course with joy. Its rising is from the end of the heavens and its circuit to the end of them. And there is nothing hidden from his heat. This should bring about the words of Hebrews that before Messiah, nothing is hidden from his eyes, right? Now, we've got this declaration being proclaimed from the heavens, being linked to the bridegroom. Again, who is he? Manhu, okay? The manna, the word, the bread from heaven. And what does the psalmist go on to then go forth? He instantly goes to the Torah of Yah is perfect, reviving the soul. The testimony of Yah is sure, making wise the simple. He's literally gone to the covenant. The precepts of Yah are right, rejoicing the heart. The commandment of Yah is pure, enlightening the eyes. The fear of Yah is clean, enduring forever. The rules of Yah are true and righteous altogether. Look at this. More desired are they than gold, even much fine gold. Sweeter also than honey and drippings of the honeycomb. What did we read of regarding the bread from heaven, the manna? That its taste was like honey. It was sweet. Where did King David, the psalmist, get this? How did he know to relate the heavens being inscribed, declaring this great plan of redemption, the glory of Elohim, and then go, you know what, I'm going to go to the covenant? Maybe he knew his word, just maybe. Moreover, by them your servant is warned. In keeping them, there is great reward. Think rewards and losses. And we know that the covenant was written on tablets of stone. But where does Yah ultimately want that covenant written? Where does Yah want that covenant inscribed on the heart of his people? Is there great reward in heart circumcision? I've put here in verse 10, regarding that the covenant is sweeter than honey and the drippings of the honeycomb. Proverbs says that something drips from the strange woman's mouth, does it not? These smooth words, this honey dripping from the mouth of essentially Mystery Babylon that would result in spiritual adultery. All of these things. And do you think that maybe the harlot, this spiritual seduction, may actually hinder the covenant being written on the heart of his people? King David knew all these things. It kind of helps us understand where Solomon, the great wisdom of Solomon, would speak on certain things, does it not? Okay, let's start diving deep now. Okay, like this was just surface level stuff. This is just basic word stuff here. We know the terms of the covenant. What is the covenant itself? It may seem like a trick question. Curtis and I will speak more on this at our Sukkot teachings regarding the covenant. But when I say to you, what is the covenant? Many of you will probably say, well, it's the Torah, that which was given at Mount Sinai. I'm going to say something that will cause some knee jerks. What is the covenant? What was actually given at Mount Sinai? I'm going to say something along the lines of the terms of the covenant were given at Mount Sinai. The rules, the precepts, the righteousness, the wisdom of the covenant was given at Mount Sinai. What is the covenant itself? If you read in Exodus 19, verses 5 and 6, Yah says something very interesting. If you obey my voice and obey my commandments, then you will be my people and I will be your Elohim. And then, so you see this covenant actually in short form, if you want to call it that. If you do this, then I will do that. And then he goes on to expand on the covenant, doesn't he? He says, okay, Number one thing, do not have any other Elohim before me. And he goes on to list the terms of the covenant. I don't want to call it the rules, but the precepts. Let me give you a shadow picture. Me and my wife have a covenant. We are married. We are one flesh. Associated with that marriage covenant are terms. As part of that, I will say to my wife, you shall have no other men before me, and vice versa, me to her. I shall have no other women before her. There are terms associated with our marriage. But what is the covenant itself? In simple terms is, if you will be my wife, I will be your husband. That's the simplicity of the covenant. Now, what does that look like practically? Well, do not have anybody else before my spouse. Do not covet anybody else. Spend time with me. Give me of your time. Honor me, and I will honor you. Do you see what's going on? So again, back to the question. We know the terms of the covenant, but what is the covenant itself? Because what happened at Mount Sinai, as we're going to see, is simply a continuation of something, an expounding on, relating, recounting, an accurate inscription of something that had happened prior. So, let's look at the covenant with Abraham. And I'm going to sow a seed for actually the Sukkot teachings. Did it even begin with Abraham? But that's another topic. Genesis 13, we're going to follow some key moments in Abraham's life, okay, regarding this covenant. Yah said to Abram, because he's still Abram at this time, after Lot had separated from him, lift up your eyes and look from the place where you are, northward, southward, eastward, westward. For all the land that you see, I will give to you and your seed forever. In certain English translations, it will say offspring, okay? But the Hebrew is actually saying to you and your seed. In Hebrew, the word is zerah. It means a seed, literally seed, offspring, descendants, posterity, but it's related to sowing. What do you do with seed? You sow it, you plant it into the ground. And this should bring a whole gambit of parables that our king had to say regarding seed and planting seed and harvesting seed and winnowing the harvest of seed and so forth. I will make your seed as the dust of the earth, so that if one can count the dust of the earth, your seed also can be counted, okay? Now, the word here for counting is not the word safar. In Hebrew, it's the word manah. Interesting. I actually believe there's a word play going on within the Torah across Genesis and Exodus. What does manah sound like? Does it maybe sound like manhu, the manna? Don't you think that? Okay. Now, here's what's interesting. The word manah means to count, to reckon, to number, assign, appoint, prepare, ordain, counted, numbered, to be counted, to be numbered. This is pretty much a very similar definition to the word we saw regarding safar. They are what's called synonyms. They are words that, although they have a very broad semantic overlap. Essentially, they have the same meaning, but each word will have slight different nuances, if you want to call it that. And so this thematic connection of counting, reckoning, preparing, to be counted, to be numbered. Think being numbered in the register of the house of Israel, being numbered or counted among the living, okay, being part of the census of the house of Israel. This heavenly census is being linked to the seed of Abraham, the seed of Abraham. And you're saying you are not going to be able to count it. Here's the thing. He wears the heavens as a wristwatch, does he not? Who is the one that can number to the precise measurement? Interesting, huh? Let's keep going. Genesis 15. After these things, the word of Yah came to Abram in a vision. Fear not, Abram. I am your shield. Your reward shall be very great. It's interesting that we read in Psalm that in the keeping or the guarding of the covenant, guarding this thing, there is great reward. But Abram said, O Master Yah, what will you give me? For I continue childless, and the heir of my house is Eliezer of Damascus. And Abram said, behold, you have given me no seed, and a member of my household will be my heir. And behold, the word of Yah came to him, saying, this man shall not be your heir, your very own son shall be your heir. So Abram is being promised a seed, a son, okay? He's being promised a son. It continues. And he brought him outside and said, look toward heaven and number the stars, if you are able to number them. It's this word, safar, the very thing we're told to do in the counting of the Omer. Then he said to him, so your seed shall be. Yah is essentially saying to Abram, you will not be able to count your seed. You will not be able to do it. You're a man. But who is Elohim? Who is he that will be able to number them? And he believed Yah, and he counted it to him as righteousness. Paul would go on to speak about this. Abram had faith. Again, this thematic connection to the seed of Abraham, not being able to count it because it's going to be so great. And as the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell on Abram, and behold, a dreadful and great darkness fell upon him. Now we're going to see an amazing shadow picture here. When the sun had gone down and it was dark, behold, a smoking fire pot and a flaming torch passed between these pieces. This is what's generally referred to as the cutting of the covenant. When you read the account, Abram and to cut them in half and lay one half of the animals on one side and another half of the animals on the other. And this smoking fire pot and flaming torch passed between these pieces, okay? So we have this cutting of the covenant being related to the seed of Abraham, and not being able to number. It will become as numerous as the stars of heaven and as the sand of the sea and of the earth, okay? So what does it mean to cut a covenant? What was actually going on? What was the ancient biblical understanding of cutting a covenant? What they would do, this was a thing that would happen, that they would, each party would bring animals. They would literally cut the animal in half, and they would lay essentially a row of the halved animals, and the people that would be coming into covenant would walk through the pieces, essentially. When making a covenant, both covenanting parties would walk through the pieces of the animals. And what they were essentially saying is, if I break this covenant that we are making, do so unto me as to these animals. Cut me in half. This should bring up some language regarding the warnings that Yeshua gives in one of his parables. Those that are thrown to outer darkness, what does it say? Cut him in two and appoint his portion with those weeping and gnashing of teeth. Interesting. There's a covenant illusion in that parable. Whereas to the ancient Hebrews, it wasn't an illusion. It was point blank. But this cutting of the covenant, they were saying, do so unto me, as to these animals, if I break this covenant. Now, in Genesis 15, did Abraham walk through the pieces? He didn't, did he? He was asleep. This great, frightening darkness and deep sleep came upon him. So who walked through the pieces? Smoking pot and the flaming torch. Okay, we'll get on to that. So the question is, who took full responsibility and accountability for that covenant that Yah made with Abraham, which means that who would pay the consequence of that covenant being broken? Oh, it's getting juicy now, isn't it? It's getting deep. Abram did not walk through the pieces. Elohim did. He's taking full responsibility, accountability, and any consequences thereof if that covenant is being broken. Was that covenant broken? Do you see what's going on here? Abraham, or Abram at the time, was asleep. That's a type and shadow of death. He was dead, so to speak, dead in his trespasses. So who would then have to take on the accountability and responsibility and pay the consequences of this great covenant between Yah and his people being broken? Let's look at this verse. And it was dark. Behold, a smoking firepot and a flaming torch passed between those pieces. Man, some crazy leaven has crept in regarding this verse. You'll see these artworks of like this little pot and this little torch with a little flame passing through these pieces, and yeah. And then people will go, see, it means father and son, and it gets a little bit ridiculous, actually. I'm not trying to be offensive here. By the way, I'm guilty of this. This leaven used to be in me. I'm not coming as a self-righteous one here. This leaven was in me. I believe when you look at the Hebrew, smoking firepot, tanur ashan, 2 words here. Tanur is a furnace, an oven, a stove. And when you dig on this, it's actually used of Elohim's wrath. Think the refinery that would smelt metal or gold or silver. The word ashan, to smoke, be angry, wrath, to fume, be furious. So you're actually seeing Yah's wrath or anger within this. It's fire and smoke, and a flaming torch. Lapid eish, okay? The word lapid literally means a lamp or a flame. A flame. And the word, this word is usually used with a theophany. Theophany is just a posh word for Elohim making a physical appearance in the time domain. What I believe, what's really interesting here, esh, used for fire, for cooking, roasting, or parching. What do you parch? Grain. It's interesting. What I believe you're seeing is a description of the pillar of cloud and pillar of fire. I believe you're seeing a theophany, i.e. Elohim appearing and is giving you a description of what was going on as best as what we can understand it. And what Genesis is saying, there's fire, there's furnace, there's smoke, and supernatural fire passing through these people. You're seeing a description, I believe, of the pillar of cloud and fire. You know, when you read the description of the pillar of cloud and fire, people think that it became 2 different things. I believe you were seeing just blazing supernatural fire. and smoke, a furnace. This is just language for us to be able to help us comprehend Elohim appearing in this fallen world. Like, it would have been mind-blowing. I believe it's saying Elohim passed through the pieces. He was the one taking full responsibility and accountability for this covenant, which means that he was the only one liable to pay the consequences thereof. Interesting. Do so unto me if this covenant is broken. This brings in ultimately the fall of man and Adam, because man can't redeem himself. It takes someone else to redeem. It takes an Elohim to redeem us from death. Oh, it gets deep. Oh, it gets deep. Exodus 20:18. Now, when all the people saw the thunder and the flashes of lightning and the sound of the trumpet or the shofar and the mountain smoking, the people were afraid and trembled, and they stood far off. You're seeing two words here. In English, it says the flashes of lightning. The word there is lapidim, which is the plural form of lapid, which is actually the lamp or the flame. It's saying that what walked through the pieces with Abram in the cutting of the covenant also appeared at Mount Sinai. And in fact, the mountain was smoking, ashen. This root word of ashen is this word ashan, to smoke, to be angry. Again, this is what you see in the cutting of the covenant with Abram. And so whoever walked through the pieces, whatever walked through the pieces of the cutting of the covenant with Abram, is now appearing at Mount Sinai when the terms of this covenant are being inscribed, counted, numbered, reckoned to the house of Israel. And it says, remember what we read, that Moshe recounted, he sephared the words of the covenant and the precepts of Yah to the people. And the people said, we will do this. Did they? Right? So who would then pay the consequence of that? The one that passed through the pieces. It wasn't Abram, and it wasn't Abram's seed. It was Elohim. Who is the lamp? In Isaiah 62, we see this regarding what I believe is the fulfillment of the millennial reign. For Zion's sake, I will not keep silent, and for Jerusalem's sake, I will not be quiet, until her righteousness goes forth as brightness, and her salvation as a burning torch. In the Hebrew, her salvation going forth as a burning torch. In the Hebrew, it says, Vishuata kalapid yivar. Okay? It literally says, her Yeshua, like a burning flame or a lamp, shall go forth or burn. Okay? It will shine brightly. This word is showing up again, this burning torch, ka lapid, like a torch, like a flame. And it's being associated with Zion's salvation. The word for salvation in Hebrew is Yeshua. Coincidence? Coincidence? I think not. The nations shall see your righteousness, all the kings your glory. And you shall be called by a new name that the mouth of Yah will give. The glory here is actually the word kavod, the very thing that Elohim will not share with another. Interesting. Whole other topic. But again, notice that her righteousness, her salvation, well, who is the salvation of Zion? Who is the salvation of Zion? Man, who? Who is he? As we started off the teaching. And you shall be called by a new name. Well, what's one of the promises in Revelation to the overcomer? That Yah will give them a new name. that only he knows. Look at this. You shall be a crown of beauty in the hand of Yah and a royal diadem in the hand of your Elohim. If this is not the bride of Messiah, I don't know what is. And it's being linked right the way back to the covenant. Who passed through the pieces? The burning torch. Isaiah is essentially telling you that's Yeshua. By the way, if this is not giving you the deity of your Messiah, I've got a bridge to sell you. In that day, Malachi 4, for behold, the day is coming, burning like an oven. This is speaking, okay, when all the arrogant and the evildoers will be stubble, the day is coming that shall set them ablaze, says Yah of hosts, so that it will leave them neither root nor branch. That's interesting. Who is the root or the branch of David? Malachi is saying these people will be without the root or branch. But you who fear my name, the Son of Righteousness shall rise with healing in its wings. What did we read of in Psalm 19 regarding the glory being declared by the heavens and the stars? That the Son is likened to a bridegroom. Who is the bridegroom? Man, who? Who is he? Who is the burning torch? Who is the burning torch? The word there for oven is tanur. This is the same word that was used back in the cutting of the covenant with Abram. Malachi is linking this burning furnace, the day of Elohim, where the wicked will be punished, where they will have no root or branch, i.e. no Messiah, this apparition of the cutting of the covenant. But those who do fear Elohim, it says the Son, the bridegroom of righteousness, shall rise with healing in its wings. The word for wings there, if you didn't know, can also be used regarding the tassels, the tzitziot. What did the woman who was bleeding reach out for? The tassels, the garment of our King, and she was healed. Beautiful shadow picture there. And you shall tread down the wicked, for they shall be ashes under the soles of your feet on the day when I act, says Yah of hosts. I believe this is pointing to the fulfillment of the fall appointed times. And look at what he just finishes off this little section with. Remember the Torah of my servant Moses, the statutes and rules that I gave him at Horeb. Who for? For the Jews? For the Christians? No, for all Israel. All Israel. This is why you need to know who the house of Israel is. And so again, Malachi is connecting the covenant. The covenant. He's saying, remember the terms of the covenant that I gave at Sinai. Now, if you had a Hebraic understanding, you'd know the terms of covenant were simply an expansion of what was going on with Abram. And I will make the case that that was an expansion of a covenant that started way before. The thread is running through. Let's go back to Abram. Genesis 17. Behold, my covenant, says Yah, is with you, with Abram or Abraham, and you shall be, look at this. Now we get another explanation regarding this covenant. You shall be the father of a multitude of nations. Nations. No longer shall your name be called Abram, but your name shall be Abraham or Avraham in Hebrew. Look at this. Because Abram guarded the covenant, he was given a new name that the mouth of Yah gave him. Same message, isn't it? For I have made you the father of a multitude of nations. multitude of nations. I will make you exceedingly fruit. So now Abram is being told that not only will he have a seed, but that seed will make up many nations. And I will make you into nations, and kings shall come from you. Could this even regard the kings and priests that will serve in the millennial reign? I believe so. Because look at the promises that we've seen so far regarding this covenant, and then go look at the promises given in Revelation. I will establish my covenant between me and you and your seed, Zerah, after you. Look at this, throughout their generations for an everlasting covenant. This is not just a dispensation or a period of time. Yah's saying this is forever, forever, to be Elohim to you and your seed after you. Look at what's being stated as part of this covenant. I will be your Elohim. What was Yah saying to the house of Israel before he gave the 10 words, the 10 commandments, and then all the terms of covenant associated with it? Go read Exodus 19:5 and 6. If you will be my people, then I will be your Elohim. It's the same promise to the seed of Abraham, the house of Israel. And the promise here is that Israel will become many nations. And I will give to you and your seed after you the land of your sojournings, all the land of Canaan, for an everlasting possession, and I will be their Elohim. We could do a whole series just on this terminology of you will be my people and I will be your Elohim. In fact, we should probably. This promise was given in the context of circumcision being given. Abraham was being given a physical shadow picture of the sign of this covenant, so that he would remember this covenant, so that his seed throughout this everlasting covenant, throughout their generations, would remember and bring to heart and recount and accurately inscribe the covenant. The covenant reaffirmed. This is to Isaac. No, sorry. This is the binding of Isaac. You know when Abraham had to offer up Isaac, the seed of promise, right? This is the account. He said, "Do not lay your hand on the boy or anything to him." So Abram's about to he's about to offer up Isaac. He's about to do it. He's going to do it. And Yah says, "Do not lay your hand on the boy or do anything to him. For now I know," look at this, "that you fear Elohim." You fear Elohim. You revere him. What was the promise in Malachi? "But those of you who fear my name, the Son, the bridegroom of righteousness, shall rise with healing in his wings." Now that I know you fear Elohim, seeing that you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me. By the way, Isaac was not Abraham's only son. That's a whole other thing. Isaac was the son of promise. He was unique. Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, behind him was a ram caught in a thicket by his horns. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered it up as a burnt offering instead of his son. And so Abraham called the name of that place, Yah will provide. Will provide in Hebrew is Yireh, I think. As it is said to this day, on the mount of Yah it shall be provided. Now, a ram was caught in a thicket by his what? By his horns. What's made from a ram's horn? a shofar, right? So every time you blow a shofar, you are supposed to remember this. You are supposed to remember that Yah provided something. You are meant to remember that Abraham was willing to give up the seed of promise. He was willing to, he displayed the fear and reverence of Elohim. And because Abraham feared Elohim, what did Yah do? He provided. And so you get this, when you blow the shofar, you're supposed to remember that Yah provided. The book of Hebrews will go on to speak on this account, saying that this was a typology of the resurrection of Messiah, that Abraham received Isaac back from the dead. When you blow a shofar, you are supposed to remember the covenant that Yah gave to Abraham, and that Yah provide something. Again, man hu. Who is he? Who is the one that was provided? The only son, the only begotten. Do you see where this is going? What did Yah provide? Who passed through the pieces in the cutting of the covenant, thus taking full accountability and responsibility? Who was it? Man hu. We'll get onto this in part 2, right? Who is he? So every time you blow a shofar, remember this, recount this, rehearse this, count, recount, proclaim, rehearse, covenant reaffirmed. The angel of Yah called to Abraham a second time from heaven and said, by myself I have sworn, declares Yah, because you have done this and have not withheld your son, your only son. Look at this. I will surely bless you, and I will surely multiply your seed as the stars of heaven and as the sand that is on the seashore, and your seed shall possess the gate of his enemies. So it's going to become so great that you can't even count it. What are we supposed to be counting? And in your seed, all the nations of the earth shall be blessed, because you have obeyed my voice. Hang on a minute. Didn't it say that the seed of Abraham would become many nations? And that from these nations, from Abraham's seed, kings shall come forth? Could this be to do with the millennial reign? Kings and priests ruling, governing the nation? I don't know, just saying. But notice, this is all part of the promises of the covenant. The covenant passing down. So this is with Isaac now. Yah appeared to him, to Isaac, and said, do not go down to Egypt. Dwell in the land of which I shall tell you. Sojourn in this land, and I will be with you and bless you. For to you and to your seed I will give all these lands, and I will establish the oath that I swore to Abraham, your father. Look at this. I will multiply your seed as the stars of heaven, and I will give to your seed all these lands. And look at this, in your seed, all the nations of the earth shall be blessed. But look at this. Abraham obeyed my voice. He kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my laws. In the Hebrew, it's saying my Torah, my Torot, my plural form of Torah, okay? Abraham had an understanding of the covenant. In fact, he even understood that there were terms associated with that. You have to remember, look, we see these little glimpses throughout Scripture. Cain and Abel, they knew the difference between clean and unclean. So did Noah. Did he not? Aren't those part of the terms of the covenant? They had an understanding of the terms of covenant. We believe that's to do with intimacy. It's a whole other discussion. But for the point being here, Abraham obeyed. He had intimacy with Elohim. He kept Elohim's charge. He understood the terms of that covenant and he walked accordingly. And that's why he was blessed. That's why the promise was given. And this is passing on down to Isaac now. A great prophecy. This is now the blessing of the 12 tribes of Israel. Jacob. So we've gone Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Jacob is about to bless Joseph's sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. Okay? Joseph took them both, Ephraim in his right hand toward Israel's left hand, and Manasseh in his left hand toward Israel's right hand, and brought them near him. And Israel, read this, he stretched out his right hand and laid it on the head of Ephraim, who was the younger. In ancient Hebrew culture, the firstborn blessing was always given through the right hand, okay? And so Jacob or Israel is giving the firstborn blessing to the younger. He's crossing over, who was the younger, and his left hand on the head of Manasseh, crossing his hands, for Manasseh was the firstborn. Jacob's hands were like this, forming what? The same shape as an ancient Hebrew tav. This is no coincidence. And Israel or Jacob is going to give this great prophecy, giving the firstborn blessing to the younger, meanwhile, while making an ancient Hebrew tav, letter tav, with his arms. Who is the Aleph and the tav, right? And he blessed Joseph and he said, look at this, the Elohim before whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac walked, the Elohim who has been my shepherd all my life long to this day. Who is the shepherd of the sheep, by the way? The angel, look at this, who has redeemed me from all evil. Could that go as far as being redeemed from death? Jacob's saying all evil. Bless the boys, and in them let my name be carried on. My name. This is critical to understand. Ephraim and Manasseh, they're going in the name of, essentially, these promises are being passed on. And the name of my fathers, Abraham and Isaac, let them grow, look at this, into a multitude in the midst of the earth. A multitude. What was Abraham and Isaac told? That their seed would become many nations, okay? Here's what's really interesting, this phrase, bless the boys. When you understand a bit of Hebrew grammar, it actually equates Elohim and the angel as the same singular masculine entity. There's certain rules of grammar and conjugation regarding biblical Hebrew. Because some people will say the Elohim of my father Abram, the Elohim who has been my shepherd, and then they'll say the angel is someone different. The Hebrew grammar does not care for your doctrine. The grammar is very clear here. This is one singular masculine entity. Again, who passed through the pieces? Who appeared on Mount Sinai? Who is the shepherd of the sheep? Who is the angel who brings redemption from all evil? Someone, man, who is he? Who is he? Who is the lamp? Who is the lamp of Jerusalem? Isaiah said it was Yeshua. When it says, let them grow into a multitude in the midst of the earth, the word for grow is dagar. It means to spawn like fish. That's where the word dag comes from. In Hebrew, dag means fish, and dagim means fishes, plural. Let them spawn. Now, if you know anything about how fish reproduce, it's extremely prolific and rapid and numerous. A singular fish will spawn up to thousands of eggs in some species. And so the seed of the house of Israel is to spawn like fish into a multitude in the midst of the earth. What did Messiah say, to his disciples? I will make you what? Fishers of men. I have only been sent to the house of Israel. Oh, it's deep. He continues. When Joseph saw that his father laid his right hand on the head of Ephraim, it displeased him. And he took his father's hand to move it from Ephraim's head to Manasseh's head. And Joseph said to his father, this one is the firstborn. Put your right hand on his head. But his father refused and said, I know, my son, I know. He shall also become a people, and he shall also be great. Nevertheless, his younger brother shall be greater than he, and his seed shall become what? A multitude of nations. You're getting the explanation here as to how the seed of Abraham would become many nations. It was actually through Ephraim. That Ephraim, the younger, not only did he get the firstborn blessing, but he would become many nations. I really hope one day, Curtis and I, especially Curtis, have mentioned that when you follow Ephraim, it leads you to some very interesting nations, okay? And when you follow this thing of the firstborn blessing, but again, whole other teaching series. But can you see the covenant passing through? It's one covenant. And as this covenant goes through the passage of time, it becomes explained, richer, fuller. It becomes understood. A great house. Let's now go back to the people of Israel. This is Deuteronomy 1. Moshe is speaking to the house of Israel as they're about to enter into the promised land. He says, Yah, your Elohim has multiplied you, and behold, you are today, what? As numerous as the stars of heaven. What language does that sound like? Does that sound like the language of the covenant given to Abram and Abraham and to Isaac and to Jacob? You are today as numerous as the stars of heaven. May Yah, the Elohim of your fathers, who are the fathers, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, look at this, make you 1,000 times as many as you are, and bless you as he has, what, promised you? The promises associated with the covenant? Now, very conservative estimates puts the house of Israel at that time at roughly 3.5 million. We know that there were just over 600,000 registered heads of households. And if you think, okay, they've got a wife, maybe, one or two, and they have a few children. Now, remember, in those days, people were having football teams as children, right? 10, 12. But very conservative estimates puts the house of Israel at roughly 3.5 million. Multiply that by 1,000, you get 3 billion. 3 billion. And that's a conservative estimate, extremely conservative. We're coming up now to 8 billion people on the earth, right now. Is this coincidence? By the way, I was saying this to Curtis last night. This kind of jars with the idea. Many people grew up with this leaven that the house of Israel refers to Jews today. Jews. There's less than 20 million Jews right now on the face of the earth. I don't know, like 2.95. Where are they? Do you see what's going on? How great is his house? How great is his plan of redemption? Oh, it's great. Oh, it's great. And all this, we're told to count and recount and proclaim in the counting of the Omer. Okay. We know that the house of Israel, that they would be scattered. This was given to us in Torah. At the end of Deuteronomy, Moses says to the people, you will fall into spiritual adultery. You will grow fat and lazy and comfortable, and you will worship false gods. You will break this covenant, and you will be scattered to the four corners of the earth. But one day, in the lands that you're being scattered to, you will bring back these words of the covenant back to heart, and you will begin to repent. And once that repentance goes forth, then your Elohim will regather you. I believe this is what we're witnessing right now on the face of the earth. We are scattered right now. We're remembering these words of the covenant. We are remembering who we are in the many nations that was prophesied would come forth from the seed of Israel. And maybe Elohim has multiplied that 3 million 1,000-fold. Just maybe. In Amos 9:9, for behold, I will command, I will sift the house of Israel among all the nations, as one sifts with a sieve. This means that for this statement to be true, the house of Israel has to be scattered to all the nations. Do you feel that now that you're starting to understand your identity as the house of Israel, has maybe Elohim sifted you? I know he sifted me. I know he sifted this community and continues to do so. But look at this. No grain shall fall to the earth. Not one grain. We can't count. He can. We can't count the stars of heaven. But what does it say of Elohim? He numbers them all and he names them all. He wears them as a wristwatch, as we like to say. Every single one. He will sift. Oh, he will sift. He will winnow. And there's a reason why. But Yah knows who are his. He numbers the hairs on our head. He numbers the stars of heaven. He numbers the sand of the sea. Did you see what's going on? He knows his house. In Hosea went and took Gomer, the daughter of Diblaim, and she conceived and bore him a son. And Yah said to him, call his name Jezreel, for in just a little while I will punish the house of Jehu for the blood of Jezreel, and put an end to the kingdom of the house of Israel. Yah is saying, this house, the promises and the curses that are associated with the breaking of the covenant will come upon this house. They will be broken and scattered and sifted. And on that day I will break the bow of Israel in the valley of Jezreel. Now in the English, you completely miss what's going on. In Hebrew, there's actually a word play going on between Jezreel and Israel. Okay? In Hebrew, Jezreel is Yisrael, okay? Yisrael. In Hebrew, it's Yisrael for the house of Israel. So you have Yisrael, Yisrael. It sounds almost identical. There's actually some Hebrew wordplay going on. Yisrael, i.e. Jezreel, it means God will sow. Elohim will sow. What does the sower sow with? Seed. Where was the house of Israel scattered to? Look, what you're seeing, let me put this in agricultural terms. Elohim is taking the seed of the house of Israel and he's scattering it and sowing it in the nations. It will grow up and then it will be harvested. Once it's harvested, it will be sifted. Do you see what's going on? She conceived again and bore a daughter, and Yah said to him, call her name No Mercy. In Hebrew it's Lo Ruchama. For I will no more have mercy on the house of Israel to forgive them at all. But I will have mercy on the house of Judah, and I will save them by Yah their Elohim. I will not save them by bow or by sword or by war or by horses or by horsemen. He will save them by Yah. Here's the interesting thing. What is salvation in Hebrew? It's Yeshua. From the root word yeshar, to save, to be delivered. He's literally saying, I'm not going to yeshar them, save them, deliver them, redeem them by war or sword or by fallen physical things. He will save them by Yah their Elohim. Again, if this is not giving you the deity and the identity of your Messiah, it continues. When she weaned No Mercy, Lo Ruchama, she conceived and bore a son. And Yah said, call his name Not My People. In Hebrew, that's Lo Ami, Lo Ami. For you are not my people, and I am not your Elohim. What you're seeing is the breaking of the terms of the covenant. Because when the covenant is in force, one of the promises attached to that is that you will be my people and I will be your Elohim. That covenant was broken. You are no longer my people and I am no longer your Elohim. Here's the thing, again, who passed through the pieces? Who took full accountability, responsibility, and would ultimately pay the consequences for the breaking of the covenant? Oh, by the way, this is, anyway, yet, look at this. The number of the children of Israel shall be like the sand of the sea, which cannot be measured or numbered. These are the promises attached to the covenant. He's saying, look, let me say it this way. Though the covenant has been broken, the covenant will be established. Is essentially what Yah is saying through Hosea. Because he's saying, look, you're not my people. I'm not your Elohim. Yet the promises attached to the covenant with Abraham will be fulfilled. And again, here, the number of the children of Israel, the word number in Hebrew is mispar, which comes from the word safar, to count. It's the same word family. They will be like the sand of the sea, which cannot be measured or numbered. Is this word again? Safar. And look at this. In the place where it was said to them, you are not my people, it shall be said to them, children of the living Elohim. Yah saying, though the covenant has been broken, the covenant will be reestablished. That's what he's saying. How? He's the only one that can do it, because he's the only one that passed through the pieces. Look at this. The children of Judah and the children of Israel, you mean a whole house, shall be gathered together. Again, the part of the promises of Torah. And look at this. They shall appoint for themselves one head, and they shall go up from the land, for great shall be the day of Jezreel. Or in Hebrew, great shall be the day of Israel. There's a word play going on. The house of Israel will be regathered, the covenant will be reestablished, those being broken. Great shall be the day of Israel. Yah Elohim will sow. There's wordplay going on between the name Yisrael and Yisrael, right? Elohim will sow. He will reap a harvest. He will sift the harvest, and good fruit and bad fruit will come from it. Hence why it needs to be sifted. Like, so many parables should be coming to mind right now. So many passages, and there's no way of doing this all in one series. Like I said, we're pulling one thread. And this is just part one, by the way. And even part one is just to scrape off the surface. Great will be the day that Elohim will sow, the house of Israel. What you're seeing in agricultural language, Elohim will take his house, he will sow them. And Isaiah 4 says that he planted a vineyard and it bore bad fruit. So what does he do? He's going to tear it up because it bore bad fruit, and he's going to replant it, and it will be even more fruitful than before. You're seeing this picture that Yah will scatter like seed the house of Israel to all the four nations. They will grow up. Think about the weeds and the tares as well. And then he will harvest them and he will sift them. Oh, great will be the day that Elohim will sow. Great will be the day of Israel, of the house of Yisrael. Let's finish with this passage. Galatians 3:29. If you are Messiahs, then you are Abraham's seed, heirs according to the promise. What? Where did Paul pluck this from? What promise? Heirs to what? How could Paul know what he's even talking about so assuredly? How could he even say this? What did he know? How can he make the link between Yeshua and Abraham's seed? Who is he? Man, who? What promise, as to what? How could Paul even know and say this? We'll stop here for today. And next week, we'll start to answer the question, Man, who? Who is he?
The recording has stopped.
All right, everyone. Let's take a break. We'll be back in 15 to 20 minutes. We'll take 3 questions for Q&A in regard to today's teaching. That being said, I will say if the question relates to something that's going to come later in the series, we'll say so and make room for someone else, because this community is really good at jumping ahead of the gun. But yeah, let's take a break and we'll come back shortly for Q&A.
Okay, let's take a quick break and we'll do a Q&A. You only get 3 questions though. That's it. I mean, those are the... Yeah, let's take a quick break and then we'll come back in and discuss what Michael shared with us. Okay. fertilization methods too. Okay, Shabbat Shalom, everyone. All right, we'll open this up for some discussion. I know this is different than obviously what we normally do, but I thought it would be a good change of pace and break it up a little bit and hear what some other people have to say and have an opportunity to discuss it. So we'll open it up. He was discussing the heavenly census. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And, I took some notes as well along with you guys. So would love to hear your thoughts or questions on what he shared. And feel free to agree, disagree. Like, I'm not saying you have to agree with everything that he said. Share your differences and we can just openly midrash it. So we'll open it up for discussion. Thoughts? I don't know. Why? Did she enjoy it? Yeah, it's possible. Here's the thing is we're loosely affiliated already with Michael and Curtis and River Branch. I've been in the stables with them, in the discipleship stables for August will make 4 years. The 12 men that I meet with every week, 11 men plus myself, but which is DS1, that's Curtis, Michael, Brad, a lot of the elders from River Branch. Well, I think all of the elders but one, and then some of the other men that all either have congregations or lead some sort of ministry or have stables of their own where they have their 12 men in discipleship. So it's a place for me for accountability. It's a place for me to go with questions, thoughts, grievances of my own, concerns. What should I do about this? How should I approach that? What do you think about this? What do you think about that? So it's been a place like that for me for 4 years, which has been wonderful. And there's weeks that go by, as I shared with them, there's weeks that go by that it seems like, weeks will go by and I'll say, is this really for me? Do I really need to do this? I haven't said anything, I haven't been, I just watch, I just listen. But then the very next week, the whole thing's about me. So we need a place to go. And, people in general anymore, with the division and just the systems of the world trying to pull us apart, it's a great place for me. Where else could I sit down with 11 men from different countries, different places? We have one from Pakistan, we have Michael from the UK and I think France originally. I think he speaks French, I know as well, but Curtis, taught and had a ministry in New Zealand. His wife is from New Zealand. So they live in Canada currently. That's where the ministry is based out of. But it gives me an opportunity, like where else would I get that type of diversity and a group of men? Some of them have walked together for as many as 9 years, consistently week upon week, for me to go. And then on top of that, it was 3 years ago. Was it 3 years, Anthony? 2 years. Almost 3. I think July will make 3 years ago. We started DS20. I think July. Yeah. Yeah. Because we went about a year, then we took a break. And so maybe it's been 2 years. Anyways, it's been a while as well. So, we do the same thing on Wednesday night with a group of men. All the men in here, for the most part, are part of that stable, and then we have men from Indiana, Pennsylvania, Kentucky, from various other states as well. So it's really the highlight of my week to be able to sit down and talk with men from different places and different thoughts and ideas and concepts and get their opinions and their advice, and take that into account when I'm trying to make decisions. So, and that's largely what River Branch is about. It's about discipleship. I posted a song. I'll post it in the Telegram group, but I posted it in the other group about discipleship, and it's "Never Walk Alone" is the title of the song. I think it's a beautiful song. Not so much. I mean, I think the writer did a phenomenal job at putting the words together, and what we experience a lot in the world as a whole. So, what the difference discipleship brings to our life, and having that. What's that? In Signal is where I posted it with the DS20 guys, but anyways, I could share that also in the other group because I think it's very impactful. At least it was for me, and speaks a lot. But I can't express to you though how much that group of men meeting, it truly is some of the high points of my week. Each week, meeting with those, hearing their thoughts, hearing the different personalities, walks, journeys, cultures, everything else, and being able to try to bring that into my own life and help guide and lead me as well. So but anyways, so questions, thoughts on that, if you got questions, thoughts, comments. What's that? You got the mic. Yeah. Okay. It's not. It's on.
So I thought it was really interesting that we were just talking about a census with Naaso, and then it's just an amazing timely thing with this whole thing, and so Naaso's lifting up, right, and then this is, so it's different in a way, the Safar. And I thought that was cool that it was Safar, and then the scroll is Sefer, and then attributes is Sephirot, and then when you're having the 7 Sephirot attributes, when you're counting the Omer, and then you're sub-attributing to an attribute, which is, that was cool too. I know it's not part of the teaching, but it came to my mind because of that word, Safar. So then it's Sefer, Sephirot, attributes, and just that word is so rich of and I'm sure there could be a whole teaching just on that word and how it's that root word could make different words in Ivrit. And then you go and you're looking at the seed and the count and just a tapestry of everywhere it is with Hosea, and then going to Isaiah 62. That was cool. That was amazing, linking that back to Genesis 15 and wow, in Exodus with at Har Sinai. Yeah,
Excellent. Awesome. Thoughts? Questions? Comments? Crickets? Crickets. We need that to, we can throw it up on the screen when nobody's saying anything. Crickets. Okay, I guess Midrash is over. Goodness, guys. You telling me he goes through all that and there's no thoughts or questions, really?
there
Come on.
is
Disagreements?
with
Michael's used to that. He can handle it.
no, actually, in a lot of ways, I think I agree. And so it just brings a lot of things with the tanur, the furnace, just then you're going to the cutting the pieces. Then it gets you to going to John 15. I'm the vine, you're the branches. If you are not bearing fruit, you will be cut down and thrown into the fire. There's cutting there. All this like covenantal stuff. Brit Milah, cutting of a foreskin. And it's like, this is just so rich. It's like, wow. The sign of the covenant with the Tzitzit, and to remember the last word of Malachi, to remember the covenant. There's just an amazing loop that comes back to the covenant.
Okay. And if you guys have anything you want to add to it, other verses, other places. Go ahead, sweetie. Do you have a mic?
Thanks, David. I looked up in Proverbs, because he just said Proverbs where it talks about the honey drips from her mouth.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, that's the only thing I picked out. So I was like, oh. So I looked it up, and it's Proverbs 5:3. And it's not nice. So I was just, I'll read you to that point, but it's, my son, pay attention to my wisdom, lend your ear to my understanding, that you may preserve discretion and your lips may keep knowledge. For the lips of an immoral woman drip honey, and her mouth is smoother than oil. But in the end she is bitter as wormwood, sharp as a two-edged sword.
So what is the honey she's dripping?
Lies, deceit.
Why is it referred to as honey? Yeah, it seems like it's sweet. Okay. But it's deceitful. Right? But outwardly it sounds great. Initially, it sounds sweet. Sounds yummy. You like what she's got to say. But then... Go ahead, Glenn.
That's Proverbs 5.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's in my opinion, that is a situation where, in one instance, the honey is, in a good sense,
Mm-hmm.
that is the honey flavor of the manna, whereas the honey that's spoken of the immoral woman in Proverbs, that's just used in a different context. I don't know that I don't see linking them together necessarily, because one's a good analogy and the other one is
It's
bad
still a
analogy.
good analogy, though.
What?
Because I think it's still a good analogy, if you
Well,
don't
it
mind me
is,
disagreeing.
but I'm just saying,
Yeah, it's positive versus negative, there's
Right.
no doubt. But
I say the land flows with milk and honey.
that's like when you got in your car to come down here this morning, the car was wonderful. It got you from point A to point B, but it also could be your tool to use to rob a bank or murder somebody or go out and buy drugs or whatever the case. But it's still it's not the car's fault. It's not the honey's fault. You know, so I'm just saying it's not like I see the connection, but one is used for positive, one is used for negative, for sure. But the honey coming off of whatever, was she a harlot? Is that what it said? Or yeah, you know, it was still sweet to the taste for the person that was hearing it. It just their heart, their mind, their focus and direction was in an incorrect. You know, I mean, they were corrupt. They were looking for that. They were searching that out, or they were desperate. One or the other. Maybe that's what they needed. Maybe all they'd heard is negative. Who knows what they went through in their life? But then all of a sudden they hear this and it sounds great, feels great, but it's corrupt.
Well, I don't know very much sin that doesn't feel great right off the bat.
Yeah, sin does feel great, doesn't it?
Steal, give it to me.
Yeah.
Lust, give it to me.
It feeds the flesh. Go ahead.
Back to the furnace. When I think right at the beginning of Exodus, doesn't the Father say that I rescued you from the iron furnace or redeemed you?
Which verse are you talking about?
I'm trying to remember, but I do remember something about the iron furnace. I could look it up though.
Okay.
That
Does anybody know what verse
Mitzrayim
he's talking about?
is
Off the top of your head without doing a search? No? You should look it up, yes. It helps everybody else be on the same page that you are.
What are you,
iron furnace, like
when you're talking about the iron furnace, are you talking about the reference to being in Egypt?
yes.
Okay.
And if there's some type of, and just the metaphor of this whole thing.
I would be highly surprised if that had,
Devarim.
if that was the same word as oven. And,
Yeah, Devarim 4:20 is so he's recounting this in Devarim. Sorry, he's recounting iron furnace in Devarim, and maybe let me look at the Hebrew on this one. So I could read the verse, and then we'll kind of see if there's
Devarim 4:20.
Yeah, but the Lord has taken and brought you out of the iron furnace, out of Mitzrayim, to be to him a people of inheritance, seed against, as you are this day.
It's core. It's like a smelting furnace.
It's a what is it? A kur?
Core.
Kur. Okay, so it's not the same as tanur is the furnace that he's talking about. But I guess in a way there's still a similar theme of the nations under the whole heaven. The verse before it, it says, like the likeness of any fish that is on the water beneath the earth, and let you lift up the eyes to heaven, that you would see the sun and the moon and the stars and the host of heaven. Oh, never mind. Sorry.
Okay. So you're not seeing the connection.
I thought there would be.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's the problem with the English is, just because it has a similar word. If it's not the same Hebrew word, then. Yeah. Okay, thoughts, questions?
Not to forget it does say not to forget your covenant in Devarim 4.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Glenn, did you have something or no? Oh, you did ask yours. I'm sorry. And then I disagreed with you, so now. Not really disagree. I agree completely with you, but I still think there can be a thread of connection there, even though one's positive, one's negative. Otherwise, it should be a completely different word than it's being used. But we have a lot of words that connect, but they aren't pointing always in the same direction.
well, sometimes when I'm not nearly as an expert in Hebrew as maybe you or Anthony are, but my reading and studying has shown me that certain Hebrew words have more than one meaning, just like in any language.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes a different Hebrew word will show you that there's a different meaning. But on the other hand, sometimes there are more than one Hebrew words that mean essentially the same names. In other words, they're synonyms. So you can't just say, well, this verse says this word, and since this other verse in another part of the Tanakh uses a different word, it's talking about a completely different subject. In a lot of cases that's true, but not all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I understand. I agree.
Well, this is not the same thing of what I was talking about. I think most of you know that the word, the Hebrew word for honey, which I can't tell you what it is, but it can refer either to honey made from honeybees or to date syrup.
Right.
So the date syrup is honey. At least in the English. So linguistically, yes. Put it in front of you, you'll know a difference.
They may be different, but they also have many similarities.
They do functions.
They're a viscous, sweet liquid that you like to eat or bake with them or whatever. So you can see why, you could have the same word for, and you just have to figure it out by context.
Right. Context is critical when you're reading. And that's why sometimes I personally don't run on topical teachings myself. I'm not saying that they're bad. I'm not saying that they can't be good. They are. Topical teachings, you tend to pull the words and the verses and the textual information rather than the contextual information. You lose the context sometimes if you're not careful, because that's not what the author's speaking of. You got to be careful, though. You better know your scripture real well, and you better understand the precepts. And I still think, even though we think we've got it all figured out, sometimes we're still in error. So that's why it's important for you to take anything for a topical teaching and discuss it, beat it up, kick it around. Make sure that you're just because it sounded like a great teaching doesn't mean that they're right in every aspect. That's why I say it's okay to disagree. It's okay to bring up points of disagreement. There's no problem with that. That's how we grow. Anyways, go ahead, Anthony.
On the subject of, like you were talking about with topical teachings, I think the biggest pickle that can happen, and it's not a fault against anyone or anything, because it happens both in the teacher and the student, when we're trying to digest and relate to any teacher or the Torah itself. We do this, and we either do eisegesis or exegesis. And exegesis is great. If you're truly, now you can make a mistake. You mistranslate a word, misrelate a word, you could get a incorrect exegesic conclusion. But it was sourced from the material. It was sourced from the culture, the context, their time, their way. Eisegesis is what I think it means. Now, your testimony, your personal interaction with Torah and how it has impacted your life, the way you see God personally do things for you in your life, that's like an eisegesis in your life. So it's not a bad thing. But I would be very cautious when using it to try to flesh out, well, what does he mean? I'm not going to use what I see and feel to try to figure out what Father means without putting it through every sieve I can know, particularly the wisdom of others. Because through eisegesis, I could use scripture, the same scripture that leads us to Yeshua, who tells us to go to Father, and tell you that the Son of Light is Lucifer, and that we're not looking for cornerstones, we're looking for capstones. You could literally henpeck and make the Bible about worshiping the devil. In fact, the Church of Satan does that. But that's eisegesis. That's exact fruit of, what does he say? The heart is wicked above all else. You don't trust on your flesh. Your heart is a flesh. Your brain is a flesh. So that's the biggest thing. And I'm not saying Michael's doing this. Michael is I'd say a rather commonly trusted source. I enjoy the majority of what he teaches. But you can see where, and he says it too. He doesn't like hide it in there, but he says, I think. You'll hear him declare. Mm-hmm. Very clear, kind of like Paul. He's like, but I say. That's no different than Paul. Paul gives us his eisegesis sometimes, mm-hmm. and that's okay. if you
I
denote the
personally
two.
think Paul someday is going to say, "I had no idea that
I
that was
can't
going to
wait.
be." That's my theory.
Imagine
Paul
being-
was writing letters to people
His
with
friends.
a problem, and next thing he knows, 300 years later, they decide to put it in Scripture and canonize it, and I think Paul's going to be like,
Yeah. You got into my mail? You got into my
that's
letters?
just my theory.
You read my journal?
Glenn disagrees with me. It's okay. I love his facial expressions.
I'm wanting to understand exactly what you're saying. Are you saying that you think that that there's a lot of what's the word?
I think
A lot of things that have been added.
no. I think Paul, if I was to write you a letter and 300 years from now
You get
somebody
resurrected.
took it and put it in and canonized it as scripture, I would be panicked personally. And I think Paul, because he says in there, not the Messiah, but I say. I mean, this is my opinion, and now all of a sudden we've got that canonized as scripture.
I said.
And people take those verses and take a lot of what Paul said, and that's where the confusion comes in. I don't think he ever intended, like, these were letters near and dear talking about specific circumstances, and without the context. And what Anthony's talking about, many take the Brit, and it's easily done, and they start relating it back to their life, their walk, their journey, and twist it and turn it.
Which has a
And
purpose.
and even Peter warns us about those such things, that people take Paul's letters and twist them and turn them to their own
But he
destruction.
says- But he says, as they do with the other scriptures.
Sure.
Which
Yeah.
seems to mean that.
I'm not saying it's just Paul's fault. I'm not blaming it on Paul. Don't take it that way.
But it
Yeah.
almost seems like Paul is there in a backwards kind of way, saying that what's being passed around of Paul's letters is scripture.
Right, but if you look at and if you look at the Brit as a whole, the majority's Paul. I mean, honestly, he's
Gospels and Paul's mail.
yeah. I mean, we've got a history lesson in between, and it makes it. And I personally think that Paul's going to be like, I had no idea. In some places, in some aspects, I'm sure he's honored by it, but in others, I'm sure he's like, oh my goodness, I can't believe you put that in.
You
there."
wrote the I would deliver
Don't
you to Satan
don't you
myself
think
letter to
that He
them?
was vetting what he was writing against the Torah.
I think he was, but I think we've had 2,000 years to dissect it, where Paul had moments and a specific circumstance to write it. You know what I mean? So we've been able to break it down and kind of parse it out and digest it slowly. And, when you first read some of those, I've had retired pastors come up and say, all I need is the book of Romans. Throw away the rest of the Bible. I just need Romans. What? Are you out of your mind? First of all, what he was saying about Romans, I would completely disagree with. So, I would never walk that journey with him based on the book of Romans.
Well,
But that's just, again, that's me.
people try
That's
to
me,
bend-
not the Messiah, but Shane says. I just think there's a lot of things. It is, yeah. Anyways, go ahead. I interrupted you. I apologize.
We're hindered by culture and language and time.
Lots of time.
We're very much hindered by that, and especially the culture that we don't understand how
Especially.
they lived, and they wouldn't understand how we live, and particularly since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. I mean, life is for us so far different than it is, and if you go back beyond the Second Temple times when Paul was alive, how about going all the way back to Abraham's time? I mean, I hardly think we could communicate with them on any meaningful basis, and yet because of the way the scriptures were inspired to be written. We can draw out a lot of things with a proper exegesis that God had written to help us understand what was going on and what the lessons are to be learned from the life of the patriarchs and others.
Well, that's why, I mean, when I study scripture personally, and I'm not diminishing anything, but I keep Torah in mind, the laws, the commands, what the covenant, what the Father laid out for us. And then everything has to fit inside of that. And if it doesn't, it's of no value, it's of no use. And that's where we start chasing specific teachers or circumstances or books, and we let those books start changing our viewpoint if we're not careful. And we have to be careful not to let that happen. Go ahead.
I was going to say what you're saying, like, I don't know if there's a word for it. If not, I almost want to make an image and coin the word for it. But, is anyone here Roman Catholic, perchance? Beholden to the papacy? All right, our 66,
Stop now, don't be
our 66 books were canonized by the papacy.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever people want to talk about Jubilees or Enoch, I'm not, I don't throw them in with my Torah. Absolutely not. But the only people who really said that those aren't one of the books are popes. The people who said that letters are books and other things are and aren't, that was a Catholic system. So I bear that in mind when I read this collection of scripture, that they put a cover on one end that starts with Torah, and then the letters of the prophets are there. We got our own up there with our Torah scroll, right? Would anyone think I should wedge Paul's writings in there, or even the book of Ezekiel? Like, that's the Torah. That's separate. That was absolutely given. Now, I'm not anything against the prophets, but I've always said I want my, if I had a no other object was a problem, I'd have my bookshelf, an Aron with the Torah scroll in it, the 5 books. And then I'd have each prophet his own book and or little scroll, because it's old days. It was probably written on a scroll, right? But each prophet his own book. And then the Psalms, that's a song book. I'd have a song book. Boom. And Proverbs, that's like an encyclopedia of Solomon wisdom. You got to have that. Boom. The book of Proverbs right there, right? And then the Gospels, the 4 Gospels, that's like you got your 5 books of Moses, you got your 4 Gospels of Yeshua, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John right there. That's a nugget. Then you've got some of the history stuff, like Shane was saying, of the first century people and the first community right there. And then we've got Paul's letters, and those are good too. But a letter that was sent in an envelope via a missive on foot from one man to another man is not the same as what was carved by the finger of God on stone. I mean, and I don't dismiss Paul, but whenever you want to treat Paul the same as what Moses brought off the mountain, you're going to get upside down.
You can, if you're
Paul
not careful. Yeah.
would have never done, with his own words, the exact same thing. The way he speaks of God and Torah and Messiah, he would never elevate the words he spoke to equate any of those 3. So I think that's on purpose. I think that and punctuation and paragraphs and indentation and chapter numbers, all those English conventions that do help us, tools that could help us navigate, can also make us lazy, help you guide your thoughts and separate concepts that were meant to be together, or combine concepts that perhaps were not meant to be combined. So you have to be aware. That's why I like portions. That's why I like looking within the Aliyah and comparing it back. And then, okay, where am I? Oh, I'm listening to the vision of a prophet. How was this given? In a confusing dream that the person themselves receiving it would have been like this when they woke up. Whoa. And then I'm going to read their confusion-fevered dream and just know it, Peshat style. So you have to understand what are you engaging with? Are you engaging with some history? Are you engaging with a vision? Are you engaging with a songbook? I love Psalms, but sometimes I'm kind of hesitant to reach to Psalms for prophetic reasons. They were singing about what they knew and from the prophecies that were given from prophets. Almost all Psalms can take back to either Torah or prophets. So I'm not against a Psalm, but I'm not going to go and, if I want to make a biblical point or share a biblical concept, I'm not going to say, let's turn to Psalms first. The Psalms are sprinkles on the top of the point that often highlight it and beautify it and make it all the more fleshed out. But I wouldn't base my foundation on a Psalm. I'm going to try to take that idea, that concept I'm trying to make or understand. If I can't find it in Torah, I think I'm out to lunch, and I'm not going to talk about it. Well, of course, all the Psalms are based on it. That's what I'm saying. They were based on the writings of the prophets, and the prophets were talking about Torah. So either I don't understand that Psalm, and I don't have enough Torah or prophet knowledge to make that connection, or I'm eisegesising, and I've taken this Psalm to mean something it doesn't anymore, because I can no longer take this idea and go back to the root of Torah with it. So those are some navigation tools I'd recommend. Good catch, Dave. It slipped out of my fingers and I just hurled the mic at it.
Okay, thoughts, questions? Sean, yes, sir.
I believe that Paul and Yeshua are going to have 5 words to say to a huge multitude. You said, I said, what?
In some cases, yeah. In some cases. And I'm not trying to diminish Paul, so please don't anybody think that that's the case. It's just we have to be careful. Who's got, does anybody have a King James? And then the New King James version. Do you have one in front of you? Okay, look up for me James chapter 5, verse 11, and just pull it up.
New King James.
What about
James.
Job, and then what?
James 5:11.
Yeah,
Indeed,
keep
we
going.
count them blessed who endure.
Yep.
You have heard the perseverance of Job and seen the end intended by, in italics, the Lord.
Right,
That the
so-
Lord is very compassionate. And
So
merciful.
take out the intended by.
You have heard the perseverance of Job and seen the end, the Lord. That the Lord is very compassionate. and
Right, the
merciful.
end of the Lord. What does that mean?
The end, the Lord.
What's yours say, Glenn? Oh, okay. He was reading the
Yeah.
King James. What about the New King James? What
That
does
is
it
new.
say?
I don't. Let me get ye old. I'll get ye old. That is new. Let me get ye old.
Okay. Yes, and that's exactly what I was looking for. I'm just making a point when it comes to terms and words and how we use them, and even though, give me just a second, Sean. I want to.
Wait, nope. Yeah, I do. You just wanted to turn me to Luke for some reason.
So if you take out the italics and you were just reading it, it says it's the end of the Lord. But then they added in intended by the Lord. The end intended by the Lord versus the end of
Yeah.
the Lord.
Here's the old King James. Ye have, which, real quick, there is no ye. The Y was a
That's a-
TH. Thee have heard the patience of Job and have seen the end of the Lord.
The
that
end
the
of
Lord
the
is
Lord.
very pitiful.
So if you were reading in the King James, what would you be thinking about? Verse 11, chapter 5.
That the Father goes down.
Right, but is there an end? Is there an end of the Lord? So what are we talking about? Yes, okay, purpose. Mine says outcome. Interesting. But it's the same Greek word, telos. Now it says that, now many take Paul saying that Yeshua or the Messiah or Jesus is the end of the law for righteousness' sake. So, telos.
They'll be like Telos closed off.
Yeah. So it's the end of the law, and that's how they justify their reasoning. So if it means end, then what are we talking about over here? Or are we completely missing the context of all these messages? Yeah, it's the goal. It's a defining point. It's the outcome. It's the purpose.
Well, it's the Geonami versus
yeah.
the Playru. Is your pizza done and there's nothing left in the box because you've finished your pizza?
Right.
And then the elements have melted away? Or Yeshua, the oven, finished cooking the pizza and now it's ready to
Right,
eat?
because I was beat over the head by that same pastor that said, see, it says right here that Jesus is the end of the law for righteousness' sake. It's like, okay, so then over here you're saying it's also the end of the Lord. He's gone. It's done. We're finished. We don't have to go any further. I mean, so I think that's kind of what you were talking about earlier. I mean, it can mean the end, but it also can mean the goal, the outcome, the purpose, the moving forward. So without the context of the message, then we can really get into a lot of trouble when we start having word plays. Let's go to Sean and come back to Glenn.
Yeah, so that end telos, is that the same in the end of the other scripture? Or is it?
Yeah.
What's the difference?
What do you mean, what's the difference? In both of those situations, it's the outcome, it's the purpose of. It's not the end. But it can mean end. If you look at just the basic generic definition of telos, it means end. So what is end? So now you take that and you come down, let me see here, let me look it up. The purpose of an event or state viewed in terms of its result, purpose, intent, goal. That's through the Louanita. The Theological Dictionary of the New Testament. Execution of a resolve, fulfillment, carrying out.
It's like saying if you look through a telescope, there's no more telescope. You have to tell there's a lot of things to tell. No pun intended.
Yeah, so anyways, Glenn, go ahead.
Well, to continue the football analogy just a little bit further, when you score a goal, where are you?
The end zone.
The end zone. So a goal and the end are related. They're not exactly the same thing, but you can't have one without the other.
Yeah. Remember it is, what do you use it? Early on in our walk, we were like, oh, telos, telephone. Telephone, what do you do with a telephone? You have a purpose. You're doing, you know what I'm saying? It's not the end of, it's like it's moving from point A to point B. What I'm saying in my house is now going to your house. You see what I'm saying? It's not the end of anything, but it's a continuation of, just like we use the telephone. So it's just kind of a cute little analogy, but that was a long time ago, a very long time ago. But that's a perfect example of, if we're not careful, the words that we're reading and our understanding of Scripture, then we can get into a real mess. Anyways, Sean, or Anthony, and Sean. Let's go to Sean and then Anthony.
Just to kind of highlight what you said about the language, language and meaning, and we were talking about synonyms. Well, how about the same one sentence just across post, from 0 AD? In current modern English, you'd say, "I love good food." But if you were to say that in 1500 to 1700 English, you'd say, "I love," but the V would be a U, because they haven't made that change yet, but you'd pronounce "I love" with O-U-E, good, and then you'd put M-E-A-T-E, meat, which this plays into the old King James Version's meat offerings, food offerings, dinner offerings. It just means I've moved food, but they would have said, "I love good meat," with a U. You go back to 1100 to 1500, I-L-U-F-E, I love good meat. I love a good meat. But you go back to your Beowulf, Old English. People think Old English is Old King James. No, that's Middle English. Old English. Ich love a good meat. Ich love a good meat. German, Norse, Little English in there. I love good food. You can't even follow your language that you were born with to its root. And like Glenn was saying, you take people and you drop them off, they wouldn't even understand one another. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I could drop you off in 800 AD Britain, and you're going to spend about 2 days trying to figure out food and water, shelter, and the basics, because you're not going to understand a single word of your language, English.
Yeah. Well, it's like Michael. I've heard him say many times in this table. I was talking to Michelle about it. I just crack up whenever he says, well, we got to chip off now. It's like, chip off, which I understand. But, I mean, it's unusual. It's different. And, yeah, I got to chip off. Like, we're a unit, right? Let's say we're a block of stone, all of us in here, and I've got to go somewhere. So I'm going to chip off. At a very basic analogy, I got to chip off. Well, no, chip off, not ship off. Chip. Like you take a block of stone and you hit it with a hammer and you chip off a chunk. Okay. Yeah. So, anyways, I just kind of get a kick out of hearing him. The difference, and because yeah. So he speaks French and English, and now he's working on other languages, but so there's kind of a mix of dialect in there sometimes that cracks me up. Sean.
I remember being told that telos is where we get the word telescope, where the telescope, you're at this end, and you're looking at it at the other end. Not that it's over, but being more fully realized.
Yeah, okay. Telescope would be another example of like my telephone, same similar concept. It was very basic way. So I like that, yeah. Glenn? Mm-hmm.
That was your text message or mail back
Mm-hmm.
200 years ago.
Go ahead, sir.
Winston Churchill said that the English and American people were a people who were divided by a common language.
Yeah. Yeah.
How about a hood of a car versus a bonnet?
A bonnet, yeah.
The boot?
Right.
The glove compartment versus the jockey box. What is that?
While we're here, I'm just going to point out, for
Okay.
whatever my worthless college education was worth, I spent about 3 of those years in an English department, and there was a lot of Shakespeare, and it is best read in an American accent. The words there have nothing to do with aluminium or any of that. All that weird Brits English came after the aristocracy fell and people wanted to make them sound different, and then the colonials left and they took it up another notch. They made it all up after we left. Come within 300 yards of America and say something about it.
Yes, Glenn.
I don't know to what extent this applies to other languages, either contemporaneously or in the past, but a lot of people don't realize that there was no standardization as far as spelling, especially in the English language, until probably near the beginning of the 19th century. And prior to that, there were more than one ways to spell different words that were perfectly acceptable, and people just dealt with it.
Just figured it out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Go back to the Y
Yeah.
and TH. They didn't have that letter. They just dealt with it. So it was a theta or a Y. Either way, it was the.
Yeah.
Either theta E or Y E. The.
Okay, thoughts, questions? So definitely with words, you have to understand context of the message surrounding it. And again, that's the reason why sometimes I just don't focus too much on topical. I like word for word, work through it, read it for what it is at the time. But I understand the concepts of connecting, and there's some beautiful pictures out there but we have to be really careful, and we have to really chew on them and digest them so as we're not led astray.
I guess what I would ask is, too, is I've noticed personally, and I don't know how other people have noticed, but when you're going word by word and you're going straight through as close as you can, I have found a lot more of the self-revealing, I need to change this element of myself, I've been thinking wrong, or functional halakha, I can do something with this. Where at the end of a topical, like you said, I've got this beautiful picture. All you can really do with a picture is hang it on the wall. It's something that's awesome to look at, but a lot of times I turn on, I'm like, and what do I do with it? Other than go, yep. So whenever you came and asked us at Midrash, it was, and until we slipped into a sideways topic, it was like, all I could think to say was either like, I liked this part of the picture, or I didn't like this part of the picture. But now I can't, what can I do with this part of the picture, or what is this part that perhaps I don't like? I can't say why it's not good or bad in any way. It's not, it's not useful or any more useful than this other part over here. It's, so I don't know, does anyone else find that when it comes to, like Shane's talking about topical teachings? I love those connections, but for me, those are like, that's awesome, but I need to read every little piece along the way, or there's really no meaning other than, he's talking about depth. Well, that's the shallow. That's just the boop, 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 boop. The why, the application, no, I can know a tomato is a fruit, but I need to be wise enough to keep it out of fruit salad. I know a lot of these connections, but what's the fruitful wisdom that I can then walk out in my daily is where I'm always interested, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thoughts, questions?
Really like the statistics of, and he's saying the conservative numbers of and then Amos 9 and all that, just that amazing prophetic thing with the crossing of the hands and making a tav, and which I didn't think about. That was pretty awesome, and wanted to talk more about where he got I guess that's the paleo of the crossing of the arms, making a tav, which is a seal, which is the covenant, and then, but there was a factor, the 1,000, and I'm trying to figure out where he got that, but it makes sense that the scattering with Amos, that the scattering amongst the nations, and that there would be people scattered throughout the corners of the earth that would come back and realize that they're from Manasseh. From Ephraim. Ephraim is what I meant. Is what I meant to say.
Yeah. Okay. Does anybody know what the 1,000 was about? What's your best guess? He didn't elaborate on it much. Is that 1,000 generations? Is that what he was referring to?
There was the factor of
1,000.
Yeah, it was like the 2 million. It was at that time 3 million, and then
That's
was that 1,000 years, or
you got to the billions from there.
Now there's supposedly 3 billion. But it's funny because we're starting from the verse that says, you can't even number them.
yeah.
Now we're going to calculate it.
That's interesting. That's interesting to think about there. Any number, but we only have 9.
So if you can't number them, then should we try to number them?
Is that like taking a census?
Probably not. But I think there was the point of that Ephraim was really scattered. That,
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. We can definitely see that picture because, yeah. Go ahead, Glenn.
okay, Deuteronomy 1, chapter 2, verse 10. The Lord Lord your God has multiplied you, and here you are today as the stars of heaven in multitude. May the Lord God of your fathers make you 1,000 times more numerous than you are, and bless you as he has promised you.
Okay, there's the 1,000.
Right.
Thank
That's
you.
where the 1,000 came in. But
You're in Deuteronomy 1, verse 10?
yeah,
Okay.
but I don't know. That's just one of those topics that is difficult to bring up and to talk about as far as the numbering.
Yeah.
The text certainly across the Torah has the same, figures. Like, for instance, here, we know that the final census of the Israelites at the end of the years of wandering, the males were essentially the same thing as when they left Egypt. They hadn't really multiplied all that much because a lot of the men who came out of Egypt, if they were over 20 years old, they were prophesied and did die in the wilderness. So there really hasn't been that much of a multiplication at this point. And so,
But during Amos's time there was, right?
well,
Eisegesically, perhaps.
Why is that?
Don't say it.
No, okay.
That's why.
well, if you turn over to Amos 9:9, it says, "For surely I will command," this is God speaking, "and will sift," or many translations will say shake, but it does mean sift in a way, although we're apparently not talking about something like flour. When we say sift, we think of flour, which has already been,
Ground.
thoroughly ground up.
Yeah.
As grain, which is in italics, in other words, it's not in the Hebrew, is sifted in a sieve. Okay, so that does make you think that it is being sifted in a manner. But then, when it says, "Yet not the smallest grain shall fall to the ground," that word is pebble, or it could be kernel. So I'm not really even understanding in my own mind.
See, I'm a prospector.
Are kernels being sifted, or
Yeah.
it apparently is not flour?
Yeah,
I
see, I'm
mean,
a
it doesn't-
prospector, so I go to a classifier and I'm classifying rocks to different sizes. And it's that picker, or is it that nugget, or is it, flake, dust. Go to 100 mesh and you just got flour gold, and it's really hard to hang on to.
Yeah.
But yeah, so anyways, your question or your concern. Sorry, I just, as soon as you started talking about that, I was picturing a classifier, shaking rocks. And so some people think about flour, some people think about wheat, but I think about rocks and gold. And
Well, I think it's clearly talking about, agricultural produce here. So
Yeah.
the only question is, what exactly is not being allowed to fall to the ground? It appears to be like a kernel of grain, maybe a whole piece of, wheat grain that's not being allowed. The meaning is I think the same. In other words, what's important is not going to be lost. God is not going to allow it.
right. Yep. Yeah, the sieve, an implement to sort and strain impurities such as pebbles and clods out of grain. And lost my place. Sorry. I was classifying materials. And I don't like any picker to hit the ground. I mean, and then pebble, yeah, the Hebrew word is soror. Pouch, purse, sachet, bag, interesting. Soror. Pebble. A relatively small, flexible bag, possibly made of leather.
What is that word?
For pebble. Wait a second here. Soror, yeah. Yeah, Saudi Resh, yeah. Yep. I'll double check. Soror, yeah, soror. Pouch, purse, sachet.
It doesn't seem to make sense.
No.
I think we're looking at something sort of like English bear versus bear.
A relatively small, flexible bag. So what was the method of using the sieve on the grain? See, we need to know the context because that totally throws me. What does the sachet or the bag have to do with the pebble? The word's not a pebble, it's actually a bag or a sachet. So one who will shake a sieve but not a sachet will fall to the ground, or a bag.
I'm thinking personally that it's a word that means pebble, but here in context it means a kernel. That's just me.
Okay. I'm going to have to look into that just to poke at that a little bit more because that word throws me. Soror. But if you think about it from, a flour standpoint, what's inside of a kernel? Once you start grinding it, there's a whole bunch more.
Yeah.
It's not one piece anymore. Now it's thousands, hundreds of thousands, That's what I'm guessing. That's what I'm thinking. And so, in that the kernel is like, what's inside of, what's inside of the kernel is a whole bunch of the rest
You're
of it.
talking about the different parts of the grain?
Yeah.
Like the endotherm and...
Yeah. And then once you grind it, and that's how it becomes a sachet or a bag or a purse, something that holds many other smaller items inside. Interesting. Okay, thoughts, questions? I don't know. I don't have an answer on that one. I have no clue. Now I just have more questions. Any other thoughts or questions? Overall, did you enjoy listening to Michael and his teaching? Not nothing against. Did you enjoy listening? That format, I guess, is what I'm asking. Did you enjoy that format? Was it acceptable to you, or was it not preferred? You enjoyed it. You enjoyed it. Go ahead.
I enjoy those types of presentations where you do have text, and particularly biblical text, and highlights here and there. That is something, though, I tend to analyze when I'm listening to somebody what they're saying. In other words, I'm not just cavalierly listening to what they're saying, but I'm thinking about what they're saying, and I'm doing so critically, and so when I look at something like that, I like to have access to it so that I could take it home and look at it on my computer or whatever, and I can look closely and have the time to look things up, to stop and look up a word and look up the Hebrew and see what the various options might be for a particular translation. So, I like to be able to do that.
Okay.
Because I miss so much. or it goes by so fast that you don't have time to look things up.
Right. Well, we do. My wife took a picture of every slide, so if there's something you want to look up, yeah, we've got them. So, and maybe that's something we share if we do that. Because I do think that it sometimes, it causes us to listen closer and more attentively because we're trying to follow along of where someone is is trying to go with this. So therefore, sometimes I think we can take more ownership of it. You know what I'm saying? If we're willing to do the extra work, but that's required. Otherwise, I think topical teachings are extremely dangerous, can be, if somebody's not going to take the time to do the extra work and look it up. Because it's important. Rico, if you listen to Rico, he always says, yeah, don't believe me, look it up, basically. There was a gentleman I listened to years ago. He's like, don't shoot the messenger. You go look it up for yourself. I'm just the messenger. So, but if we're not going to do that, then I think word for word, verse by verse is better, staying in a direction, because then you can look it up. Go ahead.
And I think it comes down to the why of the listener,
Mm-hmm.
And the how of the
Oh,
listener.
it's not. Yeah, it's not just the presenter.
absolutely not.
Definitely.
Because regardless of format, what your goal of listening is. Okay, are you trying to draw nearer to Elohim and a closer understanding of His Word? Are you looking for the next aha, something interesting to say to the next person at work? Are you looking for, something that isn't even implied by the passage? And then also the how, like you said, are you going to take this? Like Glenn has exemplified, and I'm similar. Like I couldn't even engage until I finally understood the word safar, so I could see and look it up. Because this is the entire basis of this whole teaching. I'm like, oh, good, I can find out whether or not I'm going to listen, right here, right now. Because if we're going to take the first definition that we found it on and bend it in any way, then I'm going to have a problem. He didn't, of course, but I was personally incapable of digesting the next part until that's why I walked up. I don't know if y'all saw me walk up with my nearsightedness. I finally saw it on the bottom of the screen. I was like, there it is. And so I went up, got the word, went back, looked through my sources that I trust for Paleo Hebrew and Hebrew translation, and confirmed it. Then I'm ready. But if you were to approach this very teaching from Michael Oman, who I would say is a generally trusted source of Messianic teachers, as trusted as, say, Rico or Joe, right? Amongst us, anyway. None of these three people would ask you to sit like a bird.
No.
And just gulp it on down while they puke in your mouth. They don't want that. They do not want that. And too often, that's exactly what people are looking for. That's why we go to find YouTube ministers, 5-minute feel-good feeds, anything. You're just going to look for something to digest real quick. Oh, look, gulp, 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 just choking it down. This guy lives on the internet too. Doesn't mean it's bad. But are we going to approach it as a serious teaching where you want to critically think and dissect? Or do we want to automatically assume, oh, everything he says is true and right?
Right.
Gulp, gulp, gulp.
It's your job to own it. After,
I think to do that is an insult to the person teaching you. If I were to just gulp, gulp, gulp Rico's teachings and then go to sit at his circle and he says, do y'all have any questions? You want to talk about something I've taught? And I just sit there and I'm like, just regurgitate so I can eat. Just say your stuff so I can think. They don't want that. And God don't want it either. Let's reason together. So many times he opens up, let's reason with one another. Let's let us discourse. So make sure to, do engage it critically. And I think, those pictures, it looks like they had most of the words and the info, the stuff I was wanting and needing. I'm just nearsighted, and it's small in here. But so long as, like Glenn said, if we're gonna do it, like you were saying, I need to be able to. It'd be even cool if, I don't know if they've got it pre-game, or we can get 1 week behind on purpose so that we can make a pamphlet to go with it. You know what I mean? We just let them get 1 week ahead of us, and then we can have some materials. I think that'd be cool. Either way.
Okay. Any last thoughts on this? She's thinking about the baby bird and how they're eating. Yeah.
That's how you get that wind of doctrine. That's how you let anything in your gates. You got to guard it.
Well, and one thing I can tell you about those two guys is, and I've sat on leadership councils and different things over the years with different ministries, and I won't drop any names. So when I got into this one, I was very apprehensive. I was not looking for anything of the sort, because I'm like, no, I've been down that road. And so I was called into that group because a brother here locally needed me to come in to witness to a circumstance, situation that he had. And so I'd never heard of him, never met him, didn't know him. And so I go in as a witness just out of trying to serve into him. And that went on for about 3 weeks, 1 day a week, 2 hours, 2.5 hours at a time. And then after that was done, they asked me to come back, and I wasn't sure why, so I was intrigued. So I come back and I listened, and they started interviewing me, but I was kind of like, what's this all about? And I was very apprehensive. And then they asked me to stay after about another month. They kept wanting me to come back, so I did, because I was curious, trying to figure out what this was all about. And then they asked me to stay, but then I had a lot of questions for them, so I still hadn't made up my mind, and it took a long time. I mean, because I did not want to get into another group where some leader's trying to puff himself up, wants a bunch of yes men sitting around, railroading. I've been down that road. I want nothing to do with it. But I can tell you the one thing that I've learned with the two of them is there's no agenda. They're there to serve. They just love the brothers. Yeah. Oh, yeah. They're definitely quick to admit mistakes. There's no arrogance in them. They're not in it for money or finance. Nothing of the sort. There's honestly, if there's something real and pure, then I would say this is about as close as I've seen yet. Overall, so I really enjoy it, and it's become a highlight of my week for sure. Just being able to sit and chat with them. So, yeah. What they do inside of their ministry, I know about the stables more than I do. I've listened to them on Shabbats. Like if I'm sick or the few times I haven't been here, normally I'll have them on, and I'll just listen to what's going on. But I don't know that much, and I also go to stable roundups, they call them. And it's all there's like 37, actually probably about 45 men that are in the stable roundups. And then they do it's kind of like a stable training once a year where that one Shabbat I was in the other room that Shabbat, and Anthony, or maybe it was Glenn. Glenn, you took care of that day, I think. Yeah, you did. Yeah. Anyways, that's what I was doing. It was one of those, and so then they give scenarios of this or this or this problem or that problem, and you break into smaller groups, and you critically think about how do we address this situation? What would we do? What would be the protocol? What are we looking for as a group of men? And then you come back together and share those thoughts. So it's really good. So there's training, conversation, but it's definitely not someone just trying to vainly puff themselves up. That leadership is not about that. I can guarantee that. And that is where we're going to go to Sukkot. And I think we'll have a great time. And I'm largely looking forward to spending time with brothers that I've been walking with for 4 years, but haven't got a chance to meet them in person. And so I'm looking forward to that as well. But anyways, any last thoughts? Yeah, definitely. Well, do you guys want to come back in for some more on the Lashon Hara, or do you guys want to just go neged? What are your votes? It's right at the point we could go either way. What's your preference? Choose your poison. What's that? Oneg? Okay. All right. Nobody likes my Lashon Hara.
All right, well, fine. If you want to do the Lashon Hara, say low Oneg.
Okay. All right. Well, then let's wrap it up. Let me think here. If there's any questions about Sukkot, I've tried to share with everybody, but holler at me, let me know. And I'll do everything that I can to help get the answers. What else is coming up that we should discuss? Since we... Yes, you can yell at me. I've got broad shoulders. I can take it. I can't think of anything, so let's go ahead and wrap it up, I guess, at that point. So, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom. We should close out with prayer, David.
Avinu Makino, our Father, our King, thank you for another Shabbat that we could come and gather. We thank you for your abundant mercies and your everlasting kindness that you bestow on us, even though sometimes it doesn't look like a blessing. But like we read in our liturgy, can dust thank you? No. But while we're still alive, you've given us that breath that we can praise you, we can lift you up. I pray that we all are thankful and grateful for that, and that we will honor your Shabbat. I pray this in your name. Amen.
Amen.